The verse of the day is Psalm 46:10, and it says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world." I have to be honest, if I were to just go off of my own interpretation of just reading this verse, it would be what I've said before, which is it's so important to be present with God, and it's in the present moment that you understand God and know that He's real, which that is true. And I think you can gain that perspective from the context, but the original context is not saying that specifically. So the original context, as I started to read more, is talking about letting God be God and us letting go of needing to function in our own strength, and understanding that God is sovereign over everything, including war and destruction and chaos and having enemies. And so today's verse is really talking to those who are in the midst of battle, and God reminding us that be still, almost surrender your need to fight in your own strength, and remember that God is God. That God is the one that fights your battles, that you need God's strength to overcome the battle that you're facing. And we have to be still sometimes to know that He is God, to get out of our own way, to be like, okay, Lord, this is a battle I can't face on my own. This is something I can't get through on my own. How about I remind myself, be still for a moment and remember that you are God, that you're the one who needs to play God, not me. The theme of Psalm 46 is that God's power is able to deliver us from things that are out of our own strength, that are beyond our ability. And when you read a lot of the Old Testament, you read about stories where God quite literally took control of war. He confused the minds of certain enemies to make them do certain things, which caused them to lose the war. So God is able to have control over everything. He's able to win any battle that He wants. And I think that can easily be translated into today's world, because when you think of a battle, it doesn't necessarily have to be physical war by definition. It can be internal, daily, individual war that we fight on a daily basis, which is the sin we struggle with, the weaknesses that we have. When we're struggling or when we're in the middle of a battle, whether it be warfare or having an argument with a friend or feeling icky stuff within, all of those are little battles. And it's when we remember and be still and remember that God is God and we need His strength to overcome those battles. We need the power of the Holy Spirit to overcome sin, that we then surrender. We let go of this need to control everything, which is really just, that's full of anxiety, and that can be overwhelming because we actually can't overcome certain things without the power of God. So when we be still and know that God is God, and remind ourselves that God is God and that God is sovereign over everything, and that He can help us overcome any battle. He can help us walk through any circumstance that we're going through and have us overcome it and have us come out on the other side better than before the war started or before the battle started. And it's that kind of surrender that really instills peace, because when we're still in the midst of having a battle or a struggle and we remember that God is God, it takes the pressure off of us that we have to make it happen, that it's going to be in our own strength. And it's in those moments of surrender that we allow God to move in our life, that we allow God to take control of the battle that we're facing. I read something before this that said Psalm 46 is a direct command to stop trying to fight certain things in our own efforts and let God fight what's in His domain. Let God fight what should be in His hands. Let God take control what He needs to control. I think a big reason why it takes being still to remember who God is because the enemy's biggest playground is in our mind. If he can get us to be distracted or discouraged or to believe lies or to be busy and to not take a moment to be still, then we get distracted and we carry on with thoughts that we think are true. But when we make ourselves be still and we practice that daily time of being still with God, that's where our remembering comes back. That's when we're able to remember who God is and what He is capable of and who He should be in our life and what we should surrender in our life and give back to Him. And I think that's when the old understanding of what this verse is comes into play of when you're still with God, you get to know God. When you're still with God, you have more space to hear God. When you're still with God, you remember who God is. And this is why I've said before, the best thing that you and I can practice is learning how to be present in every moment and to be still throughout your whole day and to not focus on the future or the past, but to be present, because God's presence is in the present moment. So when we're present with Him, we learn how to keep the fact that He is God at the forefront of our mind. So we're going to remember that certain things aren't going to be accomplished in our own strength, that God is the one that's going to give us the strength to walk it out. And when we keep Him our focus and we're still in the midst of weakness and we're still in the midst of facing anxiety or worry or depression or jealousy or judgment, and we stop in those moments and we remember God is sovereign over all of that. And it's the Holy Spirit that gives us power over all of that to get rid of jealousy, to heal our heart from judgment, to set our heart free from unforgiveness and insecurity. It's the Holy Spirit, the power of the Holy Spirit, that's going to help us get through all that. So when we be still and remember that God is God, and all of that isn't going to be fought in our own strength, that God is the one that helps us fight those battles, it takes off the pressure and helps us surrender us needing to figure it out and us needing to fight it separate from God, and helps us rely on the power of God to set us free, to heal our heart, to give us strength, to help us focus on truth, which then will keep our eyes on Him and keep our focus on the fact that God is God. We can't do it without Him. I've used this word a few times in the past week, but this verse comforts me. You guys, the Bible is one big hug. It's like one big warm blanket of security. Be still and know that God is God. If I'm in the middle of worrying about finances or worrying about certain things in my life, how about I be still and remember that God is God. God is who He says He is. He is my provider. He is my defender. He is my protector. He fights my battles. He helps me get through anything. He's the one that gives me peace and joy. He's the one that teaches me how to love well. He's the one that gives me the Spirit of God to love well. He's the one that loves me unconditionally, teaches me how to be loved unconditionally so that I can give that same love to other people. He's the one that sees me through a pure lens, which helps me see myself through that lens and then helps me see others through that lens. When I am still and I remember that God is God and I can't do life without Him, I get to just be. I get to be loved as I am. I get to release being overwhelmed. I get to release all fear, and I just get to accept love and accept security and trust that God knows what He's doing. Let's take a deep breath together. Be still and know that God is God through whatever you're facing. Maybe practice that this week. Whenever you have any worry or fear, take a moment, stop, and take a deep breath, and almost like you're breathing in the strength of God, breathing in the Holy Spirit, and breathing out anything that doesn't serve you. Be still and know that God is God and He fights your battles. He's the one that's going to be the best leader for you. And think about that in your quiet time. Surrender our need to take control and put your trust back in Him, because He's the one that's going to give you the strength necessary to fight anything you're going through. Okay?